nos Estados Unidos. Hoje temos connosco o delegado da AICEP em Nova Iorque, João Mota Pinto, e os especialistas no setor dos vinhos, Is Colangelo, presidente da Colangelo and Partners PR, empresa de consultoria e comunicação dedicada ao setor dos vinhos, e também Jack Couto, gerente de marcas na MS Walker, uma das principais importadoras de vinhos nos Estados Unidos. As apresentações irão centrar-se nas perspectivas de negócio, nas melhores práticas, para as empresas apostarem ou crescerem no mercado norte-americano, no atual contexto de pandemia. Antes de lhes passar a palavra, deixo apenas umas breves notas sobre a sessão. O webinar vai ser gravado e durará cerca de hora e meia. As câmaras e os microfones vão estar desligados ao longo das apresentações e, no final, haverá um período de perguntas e respostas pelos que podem, ao longo de toda a sessão, enviar as vossas questões através do chat do lado esquerdo do vosso ecrã. Este webinar será em inglês, por isso eu passo agora para inglês. Good morning, Is Colangelo and Jack Couto. I just made an introduction about this webinar and some logistical remarks. It's a pleasure to have you here. And now I give the floor to Director of AICEP in New York, João Mota Pinto. Thank you.
Muito bom dia a todos. É um prazer estar aqui hoje para falar sobre o setor dos vinhos nos Estados Unidos. Tal como a Isabel disse, eu sou o diretor da AICEP para os Estados Unidos. Hoje temos aqui dois convidados muito especiais. O primeiro senhor, o Is Colangelo, que é o presidente e fundador da Colangelo and Partners PR, uma empresa de consultadoria de relações públicas especializada no vinho, que trabalha ou já trabalhou no passado com empresas e associações vitivinícolas, como os vinhos de Espanha, os vinhos da América de South Africa, também com os Prosecco, com a região dos vinhos verdes, enfim, tem muita experiência e vai-nos dar uma visão muito alargada do que está a acontecer no mercado dos vinhos. E depois também temos o Jack Couto, nosso amigo Jack Couto, que é o National Iberian Portfolio Manager da MS Walker. A MS Walker é uma das grandes e uma das principais importadoras de vinhos nos Estados Unidos. Portanto, o Jack é responsável por todo o portfólio da Península Ibérica e, portanto, tem muita experiência no setor, é a pessoa certa para que lhe possam colocar perguntas e perguntas difíceis de como podem vender vinhos para os Estados Unidos. Eu irei agora começar a minha apresentação, que será feita em inglês. Okay, so let's start, and very briefly here today, I will touch on three aspects. I'll talk a little bit about what we know about the impact about COVID-19 in the economy. We'll talk about what we don't know, and then I'll do a brief introduction about the wine sector in the United States. Okay, so basically, we know that this pandemic is affecting the world and the US very much. For you to have an idea, there's over 7.5 million people that have been infected in the United States, and more than 212,000 people have died. So this is a tremendous number. It has have a lot of impact in the economy, in the society. So this is the theme that is in our mind on a daily basis. We also know that the global economy will shrink by at least 4.5% this year. And this is very important because this is not a local crisis. This is not only happening in the US, it's not only happening in Europe. This is happening worldwide. So this is a world crisis that will affect every single country. We also know, and this now regarding the US, that the US GDP alone decreased 5% in the first quarter, so before the shutdown of the economy, but it decreased 32.9, almost 33% in the second quarter of this year. Okay, the good news is that with the reopening of the economy, the US economy is recovering right now, it's growing, but the impact in the second quarter of minus 33%, it was huge. It had a very big impact on a very big economic impact, negative economic impact on the US economy. And since the crisis, this pandemic started, since the shutdown, more than 55 million people in America have applied for unemployment insurance. Of course, many of these people have recovered their jobs, but still the unemployment rate reached a record high in April of almost 15%, and now it's at 7.9%. So this means that we have in the US alone around 12 million people still unemployed. And although these numbers don't seem very big even for European Union standards, for a country like the US, are unheard of numbers. So this unemployment number, it's quite high. We also know that the worldwide trade will plummet between 13 and 32% this year. So because of this crisis across the globe, industries are suffering, and the worldwide trade will decrease substantially this year. The US imports, again referring to the US alone, the US imports decreased 4% in the first quarter, just before the shutdown, or when we started the shutdown, but they decreased almost 15% in the second quarter of 2020. So you can see the implications that this have for all products coming into the US. And we also know that unfortunately most governments, not only in the US but around the world, have become heavily indebted from expensive emergency relief measures. So there's a lot of money being thrown into society, into the economy, to start to try to alleviate the negative impact of the pandemic. Even now and currently in the United States, the government is discussing another package, another $2 trillion package of relief that we don't know if it's going to be approved or not. But as you can see, there's a lot of money being thrown around, and the governments are becoming heavily indebted. And at the end of the day, someone, and this someone, of course, are the taxpayers who will have to end up paying for this relief. We also know that otherwise viable businesses are facing bankruptcies. We can see in the US, we have seen this a lot in the retail sector, in the restaurant sector. Many restaurants, many small retailers have gone bankrupt because of the shutdown. So this is another reality that we are facing. So these have been tough times for the worldwide economy and for the US economy and society as a whole. So what we don't know about the virus. Basically, we still don't know what path the virus will take. We know that the numbers are increasing again, both in Europe and in the US. Some states that have reopened in the US, or some parts of the states, are closing down again because of this virus resurgence. And we really don't know, with the winter coming, what's going to happen to the economy and to society until there's a vaccine that will put an end to this pandemic. We also don't know about the effectiveness of the policies meant to contain the outbreak. So we don't know if all this money at the end of the day will help or not, and we don't fully realize yet what will be the economic damage to the economy. And because of the virus, there's of course a continuation of self-isolation and depressed spending. Many people have not returned to work. Many people are working from home. They are spending less money. Restaurants are only starting to open now with limited capacity. And so all of this will have it will continue to have a deep impact on society and on the economy. And of course, it's a cross-border phenomenon. And this has a big geopolitical environment, a big impact on the geopolitical environment of increased protectionism. Before the pandemic, of course, the US was already at a war against China, commercial trade war. It was already renegotiating the trade agreements with Canada and Mexico, with Europe, etc., etc. But the pandemic just came to accelerate this increased protectionism, which will keep having an impact on the way we'll do business in the future. And of course, there's a greater protection right now of the strategic supply chains and less reliance on imports. There's something else that we need to have in consideration. And there's a lot of policies to decouple from high-risk trading partners. And we see this on a daily basis in the US, from the government trying to send a message to people that the US should be importing less and less products, for example, from China. So this is a reality that we also have to pay in consideration. Now, a little brief introduction on the wine sector in particular. And the first message here is that the US market is the biggest market, is the biggest importer of wines in the world, by far. So the US in 2019, for you to have an idea, imported over $6 billion of wine, which is a tremendous amount of imports just for wines. Of course, this market is dominated by France and Italy. Both these countries together, Italian and French wines, represent about 65% of the market, and they completely dominate the import wine market in the United States. And then we have countries like New Zealand, Spain, Austria, and these are the top 5 exporters, wine exporters to the US. But as you can see, France and Italy, they have a huge chunk of the market, and then comes New Zealand and Spain with around 5%, and Australia with around 5%. So what's the position of Portugal in all of this? Well, Portugal exported to the US around $111 million in 2019. Okay, and we can see this number in 2 ways. We can see from the US perspective, in which Portugal only represented around 1.8% of the US total wine imports, and is the 8th supplier, so it doesn't represent a lot for the US. But for Portugal, the US is a very important market. Actually, the US is the second client of Portugal for wines, and it accounts for almost 11% of the total Portuguese wine exports. So the US market is very important, and our aim here today is to make it even more important for the Portugal wine producers. The good news is that the US wine imports from Portugal grew 5.3% during the first semester of 2020. So even during this pandemic, our wine exports increased to the US. This when compared to the first semester of last year, of 2019. Of course, the most likely probable cause for this to happen was the added tariffs imposed on French and Spanish wines. I don't know if you are aware, but there's a World Trade Organization dispute between the US and Europe on the subsidies giving to Boeing by the US and to Airbus by Europe. And in the first instance, the US won the dispute that it had put against Europe. And because of that, the United States 2 or 3 months ago increased some tariffs on some European products. And for example, French and Spanish wines were giving a penalty of 25% increase, a tariff increase on the wines. And so all of a sudden, Portuguese wines became more competitive in the market. But this, unfortunately, and most likely won't last forever. There is also a dispute right now on the World Trade Organization of Europe against the US because of the subsidies that the US gives to Boeing. And if the European Union wins, and most likely that will happen, then Europe will be able to retaliate, and most likely the US might remove some of these tariffs. So this is a moment that we have been enjoying, but that unfortunately might not, unfortunately for a Portuguese perspective, might not last forever. So what are the challenges of this market? The first big challenge is the tough competition. Obviously, every country in the world that produces wines, they realize that the US is by far the largest market, so everybody wants to sell in the wine. So this is an extremely competitive market that everybody needs to compete and to invest a lot to be able to sell. And besides France and Italy, other countries that New Zealand, Spain, Australia, Argentina, Chile, etc., they sell a lot of wine to the US. So this is the first big challenge. The second biggest challenge, and for me, this is probably the most important one, is that in reality and in general, the US consumer does not know much about Portuguese wines. And this is a big problem for us. So it is imperative to promote the Portuguese wines to final consumers. I've been in touch with a lot of sommeliers at restaurants, and when I ask them, why don't you have wines, Portuguese wines in your list of wines that you offer in restaurant, they tell me bluntly that although I know that Portuguese wines are very good, the consumer, they don't know about Portuguese wines, so they don't order Portuguese wines. And so as a restaurant owner, it's better for me to have another Italian wine, another French wine, another New Zealand wine, another Spanish wine in my offer, because I know that people will end up buying that, having a Portuguese wine that sincerely very few people are going to order. So this is a reality, and again, I'll keep fighting for this. If there's no balance, and if we don't promote Portuguese wines to the final consumer, we won't be able to grow our market share in the market. Okay, and because of this, it's another point, another challenge is that it's very difficult to introduce more brands, more Portuguese wines in the market. And probably Jack is going to talk about this, but the importers that we know and that we talk with, they tell us very often that they have a lot of Portuguese references, a lot of Portuguese wines, but it's very difficult to sell Portuguese wines in the markets, to supermarkets, to restaurants. And so it's a challenge for the importers too, to place the Portuguese wines. So it's very difficult to sell the wines, and because the final consumer does know much about Portuguese wines. So this again is linked. The other challenge is the access to new distribution channels. For example, when we go to a supermarket here in the US, we see a lot of Italian wines, a lot of French wines. We see very little Portuguese wines. Usually, Portuguese wines are together in a section with the Spanish wines. Sometimes it says Spanish and Portuguese wines. Sometimes only says Spanish wines, and we see a couple bottles of Portuguese wines. But the reality is that when I go to a US supermarket, for each reference or for each Portuguese wine that I see about 10 Spanish wines, and I see 30 or 40 Italian or French wine selling at the supermarket. So it's a big challenge for us to be able to promote Portuguese wines in the market and to be able to do it in an effective way, because another challenge is that it's very expensive. In the US, it's very expensive to do marketing, but we need to be able to establish Portugal or the regions or the different regions of Portuguese wines, and to have them have some brand recognition so that the consumer can buy the Portuguese wines. And of course, right now it's not permitted, but it's essential that the producers, they come to the US market and come to the US market regularly to talk with importers, to talk with distributors, even to talk with sommeliers, to understand how the market works and to be able to formulate their strategies to sell, to be able to sell and to invest effectively in the market. But there's also opportunities. And the way I see it, for those consumers that already know the Portuguese wines, there's a strong recognition of quality and value. So this is very important. So if you are able to promote Portugal wines to the consumer, this will spread, because there's already, for those that know Portuguese wines, there's already the recognition of quality and value. And if you are able to do this, I'm pretty much sure that we can duplicate our market share in a fairly short period of time. And again, the image of Portugal is at an all-time high. If you take into consideration that some 4 years ago that we had only 250,000 people traveling to Portugal in tourism. Last year we had before the pandemic, We had around 1.2 million people, Americans, so 1.2 million Americans visiting Portugal. The trend is going up. Everybody has on its bucket list the item to go and visit Portugal. So it's a word of mouth. People very enthusiastic about going to Portugal. People that want to go to Portugal. So this is the perfect opportunity to promote Portuguese products in the market. Another big opportunity, of course, is the dimension and diversity of the US market. It's a big market, diverse. We are talking about 330 million people, a lot of consumers. Of course, they consume also US wine. And this is, we have to take in consideration that nowadays, every state in the US, so the 50 states, all of them have their own production of wine. It's not only wines from California, but they also import a lot. And so the market is very big, diverse, and there's a big opportunity. And then together with this, of course, the consumer purchasing power. The Americans, they like to spend money, they like to buy, they keep buying, even with the pandemic. And as soon as they're able to do it, they'll get back to the market and to buy. And the other big opportunity, of course, is e-commerce. Things have changed. We are now in a digital world or in an accelerated digital world. There's a lot of opportunities in commerce, a lot of club wines. So there's a lot of things that companies can do nowadays to sell their wines. So very quickly, some of the trends. Basically, the trends, this was already existing, but the consumer is looking more for concerns with the sustainability, eco-friendly, organic, and about the wine regions. So if you have a product that you can differentiate, being an organic wine, trying to show in your promotion that your wine production is friendly, sustainable. So these are all very important aspects. I already mentioned the growth of wine e-commerce and wine clubs, extremely important. And of course, the social media. Social media is everything nowadays, since people cannot be present in events. And so everybody should take advantage of social media these days to sell a wine telling a story. All Americans like a good story. All the marketing here and all the promotions are done around counting a good story, but of course quality must precede the story. So if you have a good story and a good product, you will be very successful in this market. Okay, and just to finish, I would like to say that a quote for Mr. McKinsey from Nielsen, that he basically said that not innovating and not changing your product flow and adjusting what your product portfolio looks like will be a fundamental mistake. So I believe we can all adapt to the market, change the way we are doing things, perhaps do a little bit more promotion to consumers, not abandoning the professionals and the importers, but to also some promotion to the consumer, to the final consumer, and I think you'll have a lot of success. Okay, so I'll now pass the word to Gino to give his perspective as a consultant, as a PR company, and of course, I'm available to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, João. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to your audience of Portuguese wine professionals at this very critical time in the US market. So, competing in and succeeding in the US during and post-COVID. It's important to note that COVID is changing the way people buy wine and the way wine brands are built. But really, COVID is accelerating challenges and trends that already existed and creating opportunities that already existed. So this is a very exciting time in the market, wine market in the US, and I'm very optimistic. Who is Colangelo and Partners? We are the leading fine wine PR agency in the US. We have over 50 professionals who are technically trained in wine, as well as in the disciplines of PR. We have offices in the main markets for wine in the US, New York and San Francisco. About 75% of our business is global, and about 25% is domestic. About 50% of the business is with companies, wine companies, and about 50% is with wine marketing institutions. So when I say institutions, for example, we work with Vinho Verde. We have recently completed a big campaign for APCOR, the Portuguese Cork Association. We work for Chianti Classico, for Prosecco DOC, wines from Spain, wines of South Africa, many leading institutions, as well as great brands like Ornellaia, Cordonu, Frescobaldi, Louis Roederer. So this is just some of our client list. We're very proud to represent such prestigious clients, including several in Portugal. We also used to work with Vini Portugal, so we have quite a lot of familiarity with the challenges and the opportunities for Portuguese wines in the US. We have 4 core services: press relations, meaning getting wines written about in the news; events; social media and influencer marketing; content marketing; and trade relations. So quickly, the US wine market. It's very heavily regulated by 3-tier system. For those of you who are already doing business in the US, you know how challenging it is to market your product state by state. As João referred to, it is the #1 wine consumption market in the world, and it is the #1 market in the world for imported wines. A very positive fact is that the fastest growing segment is $15 plus. It's important to price your wine competitively, but not to make your wines cheap. João and I spoke about this in a previous call. The perception of Americans sometimes can be negative if the wine is priced too cheaply, but $15 is a great price point to consider. And Portuguese wines, particularly at that price point, deliver incredible value and have a huge opportunity. While the economy is contracting because of COVID, wine sales are actually doing well. And relative to last year, wine sales have grown during COVID. So that's a positive indication. The way wines are purchased by consumers has changed. More direct to consumer, more retail, less restaurant. But overall volume has increased, which is very positive. Gen Z and millennials will make up 38% of the market within 5 years. This is a very important point. So Portuguese wine producers have the opportunity to build their brands and build sales with a younger audience who are not predisposed to Italy or France or California. Many older Americans, well, I drink Barolo, I drink Burgundy, I drink California Cabernet, but younger Americans want discovery. They want to have their own favorite wines. They don't want to drink the wines their parents drank. So this is a very big opportunity. I'm sorry, but the slide sharing has seemed to have gone away. I'd like to advance the slide, Isabel, but it's not allowing me. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. The wine market during COVID. So frequency of alcohol consumption has increased a lot. People are at home and they're drinking wine. Average bottle price has increased, which is a very positive trend, because before Americans were going to restaurants, and for those of you who have been to the United States, you know how expensive buying wines in restaurants is. Relative to Europe, it's completely different. American restaurants take a huge margin, but now when people are drinking at home, they can buy better wine and still relatively save money. The year-to-date volume during COVID is increasing, again, very positive. A challenge is that large brands are taking bigger share of the business because Americans are buying more than shopping. When they go to the store, They are not spending time at the shelf talking to the salesman. They're taking a bottle and going to the cash register. So this is a challenge for boutique producers. American wineries are reallocating money to digital, which is obvious. You're saving money on events, you're saving money on travel and entertainment, and this is money that can be reinvested in digital activation to build brand and sell wine. As you'd expect, off-premise is growing during the pandemic, direct-to-consumer is growing, and on-premise is decreasing. So let's talk about Portugal specifically. Portuguese wines are steady in the US for the past many years, growing a little bit, staying consistent by percentage, but growing in absolute numbers because the market is growing. The rank of 8 in value, 9 in volume is pretty consistent over the past several years. As João referred to, the tariffs have helped Portuguese wine in the last year because Spain, France, Germany have all been heavily impacted. What's interesting about Portugal is that in contrast to the trend, the larger brands from Portugal are decreasing, which means that the boutique brands are increasing. I think this is a positive trend for boutique producers because it shows that Americans are willing to discover new brands and buy new brands. The press like Portuguese wines. There's feature stories about Portugal. This is related also to the popularity of Portugal as a travel destination, as João referred to. Portugal is a trend among the journalists, which is very positive. One challenge, though, is that the journalists tend to concentrate on the Douro, maybe Vinho Verde, but other regions like Alentejo and Tejo and Lisboa are not getting the same attention, and that needs to change because it's very important to regionalize in order for Portugal to be successful. First, Americans need to say, I like Portuguese wines. That's the first step, and many Americans have taken that step. The next step is for Americans to say, I like wines from the Douro. I like wines from Alentejo. I like wines from Dow. That's when Portugal will increase market share and grow success. And regionalization is so important, and regional marketing drives regionalization. So the regions of Portugal and the DOC denominations of Portugal really need to invest and promote and to build the brands of their regions. Portuguese wines score quite well. Americans who know wine are continually amazed at the quality of the wine relative to the price. And here again, I would say that Portuguese producers need to, in some cases, increase their price. Do not compete on price. Compete on quality, compete on consumer awareness, but don't compete on price because you have fantastic wines. You're over-delivering on value. I like to say if you buy a $15 Portuguese wine, it's equal in quality to a $50 California wine. I tell that to my wine-loving friends. The quality that Portugal delivers is outstanding, and please don't be shy with your pricing. So U.S. market trends. I'm saying accelerated by COVID, not started by COVID. Convergence of commerce and communications. There are a lot of digital platforms now where you have the opportunity to build your brand and sell your wine at the same time. That's really, really, really exciting. So if you have wine.com or Vivino at the consumer level, you can tell your story, build your brand, and sell your wine with a click. That's incredibly exciting. It's a huge opportunity. At the trade level for restaurant owners and retailers, 750 is a trade platform that Jack knows well and might speak more to. But it's also a media company that allows you to build your brands on their platform in order to sell to the trade, the retail and restaurant trade. Retailers are becoming the new gatekeepers to American wine drinkers. Whether it's a fine wine retailer like Gary's Wine and Marketplace in New Jersey, or whether it's a national online retailer like wine.com, or a national retailer like Total Wine, they are in the business now of storytelling, brand building, education. So please ask your importers how you can engage with retailers to both tell your story and sell your wine. That's incredibly important. Media is getting into e-commerce. Very interestingly, wine enthusiasts just announced new advertising opportunities where you can run an ad and with a click link to wine.com or Vivino to sell the wine. So a consumer who's reading the ad can click and purchase. This is revolutionary. So media companies are understanding that they need to be in the e-commerce business, and these e-commerce companies are understanding that they need to be in the content business or the brand building business. This is a huge trend that you should be looking to take advantage of. COVID has accelerated the breakdown of the three-tier system. Importers have so many wines to sell that they are not able to focus in most cases on building each individual brand. But they can help you create opportunities to speak directly to consumers. They can help you create opportunities to speak directly to retail buyers and to restaurant owners. With e-commerce and social media, as João referred to, you can now communicate directly to your consumers and then sell your wine. So this is not soft communications. This is selling opportunity through communication. And there's many new platforms that are allowing this to happen. Events are moving online. Fine wine is very tactile. You want to taste it, you want to talk about it, you want to swirl it in a glass, and you want to be with other people doing the same thing. But now we're discovering that virtually you can connect to consumers or to sommeliers, to retailers across this country. You know, the United States is 3,000 miles from coast to coast. That's more than 5,000 kilometers, almost 5,000 kilometers. With a virtual event, you can talk to people in California, New York, and Chicago at the same time, as opposed to coming to the United States and traveling for a week and spending a lot of time and a lot of money to reach more regionalized groups of people. So virtual events are creating huge opportunities to be efficient with your spending, be efficient with your time, and reach audiences in a very important way. There are big challenges in the US. You cannot build your brand on premise anymore because on premise, the interaction with the sommelier, even when restaurants are opening, the engagement with the sommelier is reduced, fine dining is reduced. That's on premises where boutique brands have traditionally been built, and that will not come back for at least, I believe, at least a year. Even fine wine retailers, hand selling, sampling, not possible. You used to go into a good wine store and you could taste a sample and then purchase a bottle. Well, during COVID, you can go in the store, but you can't taste a wine. There's no more events. Events have also been traditionally where fine wine brands have been built. So there are many, many, many challenges. There's also a big trend about negative effect of alcohol. It's almost like a neo-prohibition. And Jack, I'm not sure if you're seeing that in the marketplace and might speak to that, but there's a lot of news lately about anti-alcohol news, and wine is a natural product. Wine is food. In Europe, you know that. In America, we need to learn that. And I think that is an opportunity as well as a challenge. You know, wine should be marketed as food to overcome the negative messaging about health. Big opportunities now in the United States. Disruption creates opportunity for the people who are quick and fast and smart. Online sales are up triple digits. You can now capture data and target your consumer very, very efficiently, very, very cost effectively. Retail sales are way up. So you can, drive the retail channel, engage with retailers, tell your story in their stores, on their websites, and sell your wine. Sales of premium wines are up. This is incredibly important. You can raise your price by €2, take that margin and put it into marketing, put it into communications, and you will increase the value of your wine. João was telling a story about going into a retail store in Virginia and a consumer not purchasing a Portuguese wine because it was too cheap. And the consumer felt that at $9.99, the wine could not be good. Well, we know that Portuguese wine at $9.99 is fantastic, but why not charge $12 or $14, take the $2 or $3 difference and put it into communications? The tariffs, as João alluded to, are helping Portuguese wines. We don't know the future of that, but while it's happening, please take advantage of the competitive advantage you have right now. So what can Portuguese wines do to compete? Well, collect data. I know that you're not getting visitors to your wineries now, but we know, as João alluded to, that travel to Portugal was up before COVID. It will increase again after COVID. Collect data and market back to people who visit your wineries through social media, through direct marketing, through newsletters, also with restaurateurs and retailers. You all probably have names of restaurants and retailers you've met. Have you sent those people emails? Have you picked up the phone and called them and just said, how are you? How are you doing? This kind of one-to-one marketing at the trade level can make a huge impact on your business. And you have data. You need to collect data and use data. And you can collect more data through social media and then communicate back to those audiences. Diversify your sales channels. Importers are less controlling now. If you can create a direct-to-consumer club now. There are new technologies that allow you to do that. You can market on the platforms of independent retailers through new technologies. There's many ways to diversify your sales channels and engage with consumers and sell wine. The money that you were spending on travel and events, spend that money on digital marketing initiatives. A lot of you get European financing. Those funds need to be spent, and you can reallocate them in very efficient and positive ways. Connect with your importers and distributors and ask them to help you create opportunities with retailers for virtual tastings where you can build your brand and sell your wine. Really important is to continue to cover your basics. Submit your wines for scores. Well, first you have to make great wine, as João alluded to, but in Portugal, quality is a baseline. So make sure you're submitting your wines for scores. On certain apps like Vivino and Wine.com, you can actually go in and update your profile and put on videos and photos and enhance your brand presence yourselves. Collect data from social media and market back to consumers. Very important, leverage the quality and diversity that makes Portugal so special. Portugal is incredibly unique by the diversity of indigenous varietals, by the blends of global varieties with indigenous varietals. You have very distinct regions from north to south. You have wines throughout a spectrum, red to white and fortified as well, and at different price points, at different sort of bigger wines as well as leaner wines. So market your regions, market your diversity. The last point, market collectively. This is why Italy became so successful. Barolo, Brunello, Chianti Classico, Prosecco, they marketed collectively. They built those brands as denominations, and then individual wineries may do more of their own individual brand building. But collective marketing for Portugal is incredibly important and incredibly effective. So that's my presentation today. I do have some resources that I'll share after this on a PowerPoint, where you can read about the US market from daily newsletters. That every morning for 10 minutes, you can read a newsletter and get an idea of the market and just begin to learn more about where the market is. I will share those with a PowerPoint after this presentation. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you. So,
Gino, great presentation, and João also great introduction of the situation that is that we are facing. I don't know if you want to say anything to Gino's presentation, João. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jack, we can all hear you.
I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you all for it's an honor to be part of this this friendly get together and trying to discover ways of doing better, channels of opportunities, because that's exactly the moment we are facing. So we got to make these obstacles opportunities. Just briefly, I've been dealing with wines of Portugal for the last 30 years. I started when there wasn't really a trend. I go back to the Lancers, the Matus, the Costa do Sol Rosés. They used to do, 2.5 million cases, I believe, in the United States. Things have changed dramatically. Portugal, as we know, joined the European Common Market. A lot of changes occur within the country at the same time as Spain. A lot of investment was done within the country. We have this new generation of winemakers traveling the world, discovering new ideas, bringing into Portugal. And I think that, not really saying more of what Gino already said, I think that what differentiates us from the rest of the world is to keep preserving our terroir. It's important that we preserve our identity, besides our enormous and incredible culture, but the flavors. And this applies to the gastronomy aspect, applies to the diversity of the regions that we have, which also reflects on the wine. So I've seen a lot of changes throughout my career, and I will be sharing with you, and I also will be sharing what are some of the challenges that Portugal still faces. The COVID impact, up to March, I probably was doing average 30 trips, not to say 50, in the United States. MS Walker is a company that has partners throughout the country. We have our home states, which we direct distributor, which is Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, and then we broker in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. We are the first company right after Prohibition, going back to 1933. So we are a family company. We are the 5th generation. Our company is divided in 2 segments, which is the spirits, and then we have the wines. Even within the organization, we have channels, which is just on-trade, on-premise business, salespeople on the market. We also have the off-trade. Then we have the general division. So the company understands that it's nice to be big, but you also need to please your partners that you do business with. And for that, we have to have a lot of brand managers. I'm in charge in Portugal and Spain. There is other that is charged in France and Italy. So the MS Walker has put together, and they believe in people. It's in the end of the day, companies succeed because of people. We are a case study. MS Walker is a case study, and not deviating from this point, but we have meditation in a company. We have yoga in a company, because the well-being of people they will end up working harder with more passion, and the reflex of that, it will turn into success. My experience since March, my last trip was in Chicago in March. Lots of things have changed. I have to say that as far as sales goes, and Gino mentioned it quite well, the retail business is definitely growing. What we are finding is sometimes we have this term that when things are good, people drink, and when things are bad, people drink more, sometimes cheaper. But I have to say that right now, and again, we have a lot of database throughout our partners in US, our own home states. People are buying what they're more comfortable with now. We can see that, incredible to say, but bag-in-the-box business it's growing substantially. We have one big brand, which is Boda Box. We have 100,000 cases this year in a short period of time. People also buying wines that the big bottles, the 1.5s. It seems they want more alcohol at home than previous. And I also believe, and I've seen this, is people, when things were good, don't forget that after the COVID-19, unemployment was around 3.5. And consumers will spend $50 in a bottle of wine without knowing, except probably reading a shelf talk that was on the shelf. They will buy a $50 bottle of wine, and then if they would not like the wine, they say, I will not buy this wine anymore. At the stage that we are today, they're not taking those risks anymore. They are going back to brands that they actually feel comfortable with. They have experienced great times with drinking those wines. So although the alcohol business is still very healthy, there is a new way of doing business. So I think that, and Gino emphasized quite well also, the restaurant business is suffering a lot. We don't know what's going to happen as the cold weather also is going to come in place. The patios, they're going to be closed. In New York, I believe you only allowed to have 25% of the capacity. In Massachusetts, where I am, it's 50. So they're not taking much risks. The sommeliers, the owners, they're buying the wines. They either are using what they still have a lot in stock from the previous months that before COVID, or they are more methodic what they are buying. So I don't need to go more into what's happening with the COVID, because this is a worldwide pandemic and the symptoms are the same around the world. We know that this year, and I was in New York and Connecticut just the past 2 weeks, and a customer's big change, they were telling me that they're looking to have a double Christmas this year, because people are afraid to gather together, and we're going to see more activities in people's houses. And in the end of the day, it's good for the business. It's not good for the restaurants. It's a sad situation. Now, me and João, and I'm going to start getting into the part that I've spoken quite a bit, and the first time we did was in Chicago, is I think that our partners and producers in Portugal, they have to be more selective when it comes to choosing an importer. There is a lot of good importers that are doing a great job, but it's very, very expensive to come into the United States and travel the United States. So having a great importer or a great distributor, but importer, then you need to know the demographics of the importer, if they can reach all the states, or at least reach the most 30 important states. What are the floor plan they have? What are their channel of distribution? Do they have on-trade? Do they have brand managers that they focus in national or international? So this is very important information that any of the wineries, producers in Portugal have to focus. Then after selecting this import, and by the way, I want to emphasize that the existing importers, they're doing a great job. But I'm talking about, even though the ethnic market is still very important, although the ethnic market is very important, but the broader market is where we need to position ourselves moving forward. The ethnic market is now divided in two segments. The old generation that drinks wine is all about price. Then we have the new generation that have been born here. They are educated in the United States. They start thinking about wine. They also are the bridge to this new millenniums. By the way, my heritage, you should try this wine. So we have a lot of momentum also in the ethnic market, but the growth is no longer in the ethnic market. The growth is definitely in the broader market. After choosing the importer, now comes to, and Gino, I agree again with what you're saying is sometimes our wineries in Portugal, they try to give the best price, and sometimes when a distributor or an importer in XYZ stage just buys 2 or 3 pallets and then asks that export director, can you come to the market and work the market? You know, they're going to say, my God, on 3 pallets, I only made, let's say, $5,000 profit. You know, I'm going to spend more than that just going to the United States, work the market, taking the salespeople to restaurants, etc. So sometimes you need to look at your portfolio and see the areas then you can actually increase. For example, I know a brand from Italy, a Pinot Grigio that's quite famous, that they're selling it for $19.99. Actually, the cost of the brand is probably €4, but they added another €4 and per bottle. So imagine €4 times 12 times 1,000 cases. It puts you with a great budget that you can definitely start marketing the brand and create awareness within the brand. So selecting the import is important. Knowing the American market is also very important. It's not just being an export director. You need to know exactly what is your target. It's not just because in Portugal this is being successful, it doesn't mean that is going to work in the United States. You need to know exactly the market that you're in. You need to be well prepared. You need to communicate very well. And it's the most important thing for any export director is to able to blend these two cultures. You know, we're living, it's almost like saying a world culture blended with a new world approach. So we have here two points that it's very important. And this is one of our lucky years on MS Walker that we are distributors, we are importers, we're in a very good position. But sometimes we select an importer and we're so excited to sell a wine, but this importer sometimes don't have the resources to travel the country, to spend time in the market with the salespeople, to do wine seminars, to be in front of the salespeople. Why Portugal? Things that we just mentioned. Three times on a road, one number one destination in Europe. I believe with between TAP, American, Delta, and United, it's around 10 flights to Portugal every single day from the United States, or it was before COVID. So there is a lot of momentum. I was in San Francisco, I saw TAP landing. I was in Chicago, I see TAP. It was a great momentum. No question that when a country becomes a destination, and thank God that Portugal is really, and I hope it comes back, the awareness in the export business will increase. No question that we did a lot of tastings in markets, myself, our team, and there isn't a single person when I do tastings that they even going to Portugal, they have been in Portugal, or their friends told about Portugal, or they were planning to go. So there is a lot of momentum, and I tell you in 30 years, and in the last 5 years, 6, 7, this was not happening. So we have something in our hands. The problem we have is the consumer. You know, the press that we've been doing with the wine media. And by the way, when I talk about wine media, from the decanters of the world, spectators, wine enthusiasts, wine and spirits, to name a few, 80% of the people that read those magazines are people within the business. The consumer only reaches those magazines 20%. So it's important that we get those ratings, as Gino mentioned, continue to make quality wines and get those ratings, submit samples. But the customer, the retail knows what's going on with Portugal. They know the qualities of the wines, and the entree, the sommeliers, they also know what's going on with wines of Portugal. But the bridge is not completed because we're not touching the consumer. And this is going to bring me into the next. You know, in the end of the day, when around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, when I'm watching TV, it's incredible what I see with all these food channels, cooking channels. The audience, it's amazing. But going back to the consumer, how are we going to touch the consumer? I used to fly and landing and connecting with the airports in the United States. I used to see the wine magazine or those kiosks. I don't see those magazines anymore. Although I do see Food and Wine magazine, I see Bon Appetit and other food magazines that not just talks about wines, but food, but they also talk about specific countries, and they also talk about wines. This is something that I think we should start utilizing that. I see that Vini Portugal has been great. Vini Portugal has been proactive. Vini Portugal has been contacting a lot of the importers, you know, researching for ideas. But I also noticed something, that people that they are taken to Portugal, sommeliers, some of the wine stores and so on, I don't know if that really pays off the investment that gets done. I mean, I have two examples that, and I'm not going to mention names, but two sommeliers, one from Chicago and one from New York, that spent the week in Portugal. They tasted great wines. The hospitality, as they told me, was unbelievable. And then when you go in and you try to sell them wines, they're going to say, okay, give me a 6-pack of this wine. You know what I'm saying? So they're not even promoting with the experience and that they had in Portugal for their week. They're not translating that into the wine, into the people, to the consumers that go into the restaurants. And João, this goes back to our frustration that we walk into restaurants, besides ports, because ports is all over, but you see wines from all over the world, and basically you don't see wines from Portugal. And if they had the wines from Portugal, after 3-4 months, if the wines do not rotate, they take the wines out of the wine list. It's very, very frustrated because here we are working. And consumer awareness, it's the most important thing now. We need to reach that. Not just with the website, as some of Gino mentioned, but I put something here, which is the VinePair website, Food Network. We should invest, go into these cooking channels. I was just watching the other day. Now is Greece. Greece is becoming very active on Food Network. You know, they choose this lady she was actually born in Greece. She came here when she was young. So she has a program in here, but she's doing a lot of clips within the country. And in Greece, they're talking about, you know, it's not fusion food. It's almost like cozy food. It's authenticity. It's flavor. It's the passion. And they even bring people there. They talk about olive oil. They talk about the wine. So all this is like, even myself, I get attached to that because I'm watching something different. I'm watching terroir, flavor, authenticity, passion. Because some of the people they even talking, they're not even speaking English. So she talks in Greek with them and she translates. So it's fantastic. So I think that we should utilize our resources. We have to keep feeding the wine magazines, no question. But these are, and by the way, we have a marketing company. MS Work has a very big marketing company because we promote brands around the country. And so we, more than probably small companies, this information was actually, I had a meeting with one of the directors from our company, and this is what they felt that was probably the direction to go. So I think that moving forward, I don't know how we're going to contact the food channel, but I'm sure that the Trade Commission, there is PR, Gino may be able to reach these people, try to bring them into Portugal. Not just talk about the food, but also talk about the wines. Make sure that it diversifies, and besides just the most talked regions that we have in Portugal, of course, we have a lot of regions, but we need to also explore all the regions. Talk about Portugal itself, not just one in the north region, one in the south. No, we need to talk about Portugal. We need to talk about the new generation of winemakers that are traveling the world, bringing ideas into Portugal. We need to communicate that we are an industrialized country, but we still preserve our roots, our culture. So this message only can get into the consumer, so the consumer will feel passion. I don't know if it was last year, I was traveling. It wasn't on JetBlue, but I think it was American Airlines. And I opened the magazine, the Insert magazine. Imagine this: American Airlines before COVID, had annual travels was around 15 million people. So they have that Insert magazine. You on a plane, if you don't have wireless, you're gonna read something, but you also have a tendency to grab the magazine. They were talking about Portugal just briefly. They were talking about Calverde. You know what I'm saying? It was a great article, just talking about a great soup that is very Portuguese. You know, imagine out of the 15 million people, that 8 million people had a chance to read that. They're on a plane, they were not distracted, they were focused. This is a great direct marketing. Again, is to reach the consumer. We know that the retail, again, Gino, we know that we cannot do tastings anymore. You know, people are coming to our tastings and they were saying, what's the price of this wine? And you say, this is $14.99 on the shelf. They say, it's amazing. It's amazing. But in their mind, it's all about Italy, France, Australia has decreased substantially, New Zealand because of the Sauvignon Blancs, you got the German because of the Rieslings. But don't forget, Portugal years ago was other, now we in 7 or 8 position United States. So the momentum, we did something well. We have built the foundation, but we're not reaching the consumer. Consumers should be hypnotized in a way that they walk into a store and say, do you have wines in Portugal? Let's not be intimidated about the grape varieties. We're not going to sell Portugal about Touriga Nacional, Tinto Roriz, and other grape varieties, because people that buy Amarone, people that buy Chiantis, they don't know sometimes if it's Sangiovese. They don't know what the grape varieties are on the Amarone. They buy in the Amarone. They buy in Italy. They buy, you know what I'm saying? So we need to sell, is the regions. We need to create statements in the stores. This one facing or 2 facings of Portuguese wines in the store, it's not a message. That's why what they do is they put it next to Spain. So people sometimes, it's like, they're not even know if it's a Portuguese or if it's a Spanish wine. Both countries are great. There's a lot of similarities, and I could go on and on and on, but we need to spread our identity and always think that continue with our being humble, but we also good. So my message goes to anyone that is Vini Portugal, individual producers. I think that the message has to be, let's reach the food magazines, because it's amazing what's going on with the food momentum. It's several channels. It's so many channels talking about food. It's incredible. We need to reach that audience. I see them talking about Spain, Italy, Greece, but not Portugal. We need to bring them to Portugal. Let's go a year or 2 without bringing any sommeliers and perhaps wine buyers from stores. Let's go into the channel that is going to give us a much better awareness. And this will reflect, João, that you're going to go into those, and myself and everyone, we're going to go into the restaurants and we'll start seeing more wines of Portugal. There is a little bit of momentum, but we are so far away from Italy, from Spain, from France, from America, because America, 75% of the wines consumed in the United States are wines produced in the United States. Gino also mentioned a good point that it is true. The new millenniums, there is a lot to be said about the millenniums. They prefer to go on vacation and drink a good bottle of wine than probably buy a house now. This is the way it is. But they want this, for example, this is a bottle of water. But you know what they like to do is they walk into a place and drinking this incredible wine. They take a picture and they send it to all their friends and saying, ha, 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 look what you're missing. I just discovered this wine. And the buzz, it starts. So it's very important, because the millenniums are now loyal to brands. Now, this could be against or in favor, but now being loyal to brands, they're more open to taste other brands. And this is where Portugal comes in. You know, it's like, wow, I've heard about Portugal, but I don't have any experience. You know, it's and another problem also, it's several ones, is I had a call the other day from someone in Tennessee, said, I visited one of your wineries in Portugal, but I cannot find your wine in Tennessee. It happens to be Tennessee. And we also need to find, and I understand when we ask our partners or Vini Portugal, whatever, any of the trends or the government to spend money in the United States, and we still don't have a network distribution in the country. We focus a lot in the East Coast. You know, I was in Texas, you see some vineyards there, but really we need to have presence in every state. So the marketing that gets spent will embrace and touches all those markets. Because it's one thing that someone goes from Idaho, from Amazon, from whatever state, they go into Portugal, and then they come back, they cannot find Portuguese wines in their stores. So if the final consumer will start asking for the wines, how come you don't have wines in Portugal? Or walking into the stores and say, can you bring wines in Portugal? I think this will create a different momentum, and the spread of presence in wines in Portugal will definitely increase in the United States. So it's all about, João, we talked a lot about this. It's frustrating sometimes that we taste wines with sommeliers. I did so much work in the market before this COVID. They love the wines, even some of our spirits. We have great cognacs. I mean, we cannot call cognac, but we have some great spirits, and they all taste it. My God, so they buy it actually. But then the rotation, it's where the problem is, because the consumer, it's either not familiar, they intimidated. So this has been some of our challenges, and I think we need to change the approach for 2020, because obviously it looks the vaccine will come out pretty soon. It will take another 6 months to adjust, but we're going to go back to our normal lives. This virtual world, it's very important, but I miss hugging people. So this has to come back. We need to, because wine connects people. You know, people are missing this interaction, going into wine stores, to wine tastings, wine dinners. So this will come back. This is just one of the challenging moments that we're facing. But I think this is a good time that we can batonage all these ideas and start thinking exactly the direction we should go. I put some of the magazines, it could be others, Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, Food Network, there is other ones, which is Travel Leisure, and Food Network, Cooking Channel, and this is some of the points I wanted to make. And I'm open to discussions.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack, and thank you all for all the presentations and the recommendations for the Portuguese wine companies. I remind the participants that we still have a couple of minutes for some questions, and we already have some questions indeed. Fernando Ramos asks if Robert Parker scores are critical to enter in the US market. I think I can address these questions to all of you. What about the importance of these scores?
Scores are important, but there is no one single answer to success in the market. You need the score for validation to the serious wine drinker, but then you also need distribution, as Jack referred to. You need consumer awareness to get the score out into the marketplace, whether that's through social media or digital marketing or traditional PR. Scores are important and fundamental, but they're one piece of a bigger picture.
They are not determinant. You have to combine that with some other conditions.
There is no single solution to success in the market. Everything has to be integrated.
I don't know if Jack Couto will add something about this subject, or maybe João.
Jack, I can briefly say that I totally agree with Gino. I mean, a wine score, it is what it is. If you have a strong marketing presence, you won't need a very good score on the wine, right? I mean, if you have a strong presence in the market, if you invest, Americans will buy will buy anything. It's not because your wine has 90 plus points on a wine spectator or whatever that will sell in the market. Most of the wines, they don't reach those marks and they sell quite a lot. So it's more about the way you promote your wine in the market.
You're right.
We should not on that. Sometimes there is some customers out there that get offended when you present the wine and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is just got 92 points. They're gonna sell. You selling ratings or you selling wine? I have to give you so many examples. I'm not going to mention the name of the wine, but there is some wines from California that do 12 million cases in the United States, which is a red blend. Yeah, they don't have a single. You know what I'm saying? So it's just the way they market the wines towards the consumer, and consumer goes to the store and wants to buy the wine.
Thank you. Bruno Rebelo de Sousa brought us another subject. It's not a question, but almost an observation. The US doesn't recognize EU certification of organic wines. Could you give us an overview, maybe Gino or Jack, Couto, about the organic wines and this market in the US?
It's been some challenges on that aspect because I have some partners that have organic wines, and we have submitted those for COLA approval, and it was rejected. We need to find a way that there will be a better. I don't know if I really don't know exactly the details, but it is correct. It is correct that it's considered in Europe, and I don't know if it gets to translation, but we definitely know it's an area that we should probably explore and navigate quite fast in order to avoid this obstacle. You're completely right.
I think that there's a lot of confusion in the United States about natural, biodynamic, organic. I think it's expensive to get the certification, and I don't know, frankly, if it's worth it because it takes a couple of years and it's very expensive. I think that wine is a natural product, and Portuguese winemakers, like Italian winemakers, Spanish winemakers, mostly are producing their products in a very sustainable way. And you can tell that story of sustainability and food and wine without a certification. Personally, that's my belief. I think the market percentage who are looking for that certification is very small, and it's too expensive to target them.
Absolutely.
And it's a very complex process, as you said.
Yes,
right?
and it takes a long time. Yes.
Another question from Ricardo Almeida. Are there any restrictions on the e-commerce if the product is not already in the US?
Well, you have to have a licensed importer, but there are companies that can manage all your logistics and licensing, so you can essentially import your own wine and then sell it to e-commerce. But you do need to go through the 3-tier system, or at least you need an importer. And some states you can go straight to retail, others you need a distributor. But there are many ways to get the licensing and facilitate the sale, more now than ever before. Jack probably knows much more about this.
It's absolutely right. You need to have an importer that's basically, some big retailers also have license. To give you an example, the license could cost you up to $1,000 to be an importer. So they also look in, the money they're going to spend versus if it's worth it or not. But the United States is very much the 3-tier system, which it's the importer, the distributor, and the retailer. So it's because you can, if it was in the United States, you cannot just ship wines from Portugal directly to a consumer. That will never happen. That will never happen. It's against the law.
Right.
But as you said, the e-commerce is growing very fast in this context.
But again, I'm sure that Jack's company sells to e-commerce retailers, right? And that's a big part of your business now. And there are again, there are companies that will provide licenses that you can bring the wine in, and then you can sell it through the distribution channel, essentially self-importing. So there are many paths to market, and it's important to find the best path for your company.
We have another question from João Vilar. It's a quite very huge question. I would like to ask how to enter the US market. What is the best strategy, national or state distributor? And the retail, do they import directly? And e-commerce, can AICEP help? That I think João can answer. AICEP, of course, can help with some information. But the first questions I will address to Gino Colangelo and Jack Couto. The best strategy. Can we have a simple answer for this question?
Well,
no simple answer.
There was no such thing. First of all, they I don't know the size of the company that this person works for, owns it. He needs to look at the production-wise what does exactly does. I don't know the stylistically price points. It's $9.99, where it's a $50 bottle of wine. So you need to take all that into consideration. And then I think that the best way is you have the East Coast, you have the Midwest, and you have the West Coast. Sometimes when you try to embrace everything, it becomes an issue. You get lost, you lose focus. So I think that the best way is perhaps go into the East Coast, do a nice job, get a great importer. But again, I mentioned that at the beginning. A great importer is also going to demand something from this producer. How often are you going to come to the States? Are you going to share? You're going to share more and more. Any incentives with the salespeople? And by the way, incentives is not $3 a case. We have situations that we give $20 a case. We have our partners in Europe, in Portugal, that we do a lot of incentives throughout the year. We spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and we have these partners in Portugal that we go 50-50, because that's the only way we're going to focus. Why is a salesperson going to go out there and bring this wine when he's being incentivized on other wine to push? Then again, perhaps you need to either increase the price of the wine and get the budget from it, or get the European funds, as Gino mentioned, and utilize that. I do that with Spain. I do that with Portugal. You know what I'm saying? There is a budget. We need to create receipts, market research, liquids, whatever that is. So choose your importer. Be prepared, not just that you have wine. Offer yourself to come to the market. I want to be in the market. I want to work with your salespeople. I want to make myself available. I want to incentivize the salespeople. Why should I have your brand? So these are all tools that are important beyond the wine, and focus by territory. United States is too big. If you've never been in the United States, forget about the 50 states. Focus and slowly start moving into the other part of the country. That's my opinion.
So, as you say, the strategy depends on the region and
depends on the producer. It depends on the wine. It depends on the investments. There's so many factors, and there's so many different routes to market. You need to do your research and make a strategy, because as soon as you start going down one path, then you're committed by time and money, and you have to make sure it's the right path for you.
I just want to add to that we, MS Walker, we employ over 600 and something people. We have a national team too. And we still, although we have partners in every state, we don't have Portuguese wines in every state. And we have a national team. You know why? We cannot spread ourselves too much. If we go to Chicago, Wisconsin, we focus, we try to build in 10 states, momentum, create a foundation, create a distribution. When we solve it, then we start moving into other parts. You can just, and we are a well-financed company, and we in 50 states, and we don't have the wine in every 50 states yet. You know what I'm saying? For us to say that we stole a pallet in Idaho, what is that? A pallet is nothing. It's symbolic. You know what I'm saying? So focus, choose the markets, and work from there. That's my opinion.
And thank you. And we have another question related to marketing. Denise Esteves asks if are there any fees associated with marketing for anyone who wants to market wine in the US?
What was the question? Can you repeat the question again?
Are there any fees, any taxes or something associated with marketing for anyone who wants to market wine in the US?
Gino, I think it's a little bit of your area.
When you say the fees associated with marketing, I mean, there's a cost to everything, whether you hire a salesperson or a brand manager, whether you hire an agency, whether you support your importer with incentive to sell your wine. But time and money, I mean, that's ultimately what everybody has to invest. Nobody will sell wine in the US without investment. I would only say that if you're not prepared to invest your time and your money for not for 1 year, but for 5 years, then better to focus on Europe or Portugal or whatever. You have to make a long-term plan and a commitment to investment at least 3 to 5 years, or else you shouldn't even start.
It takes quite long. It's work. Jose Castro addresses a question directly to Jack. Jack, there are space to more premium vinho verde wines instead mostly entry-level vinho verde?
In the US? Yes, I think that vinho verde, and Gino has been part of it. I think it's a campaign that vinho verde has been. We're trying to elevate the image of vinho verde. You know what I'm saying? The first interest of vinho verde in the United States was to the ethnic market, and we understand we all immigrants, and Italians are the same, the Spanish are the same. You know, they're fighting prices. The prices are coming down, and I have customers that said that you guys are the worst enemies of yourselves because we end up killing the image of a brand. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we have enough $6.99, $7.99 vinho verdes. For example, I do business with one of the producers in Portugal, and we launched one of the vinos from Quinta do Regueiro, which is Fural, and this is a price point, and we sell 95%. We sell this Alvarinho, we buy the allocation in the broader market, not in the ethnic market. So yes, there is market because vinho verde is quite unique, exquisite. It's got everything and I'm so happy that I walk throughout the country and I work out the country, and I see restaurants now selling vinho verde by the case. But I think we need to raise the price. It's no longer the market doesn't need another $6.99. We need to raise the bar.
I agree 100%. I mean, Vino Verde. I'm sorry, João, but we do represent Vino Verde here, and we're very passionate about it. We know the quality of the wines. There's many estate producers making very differentiated, very good wine with different taste profiles. Great food wines. So sell on quality and sell on brand, not on price. I agree 100% with Jack.
Yes, let me.
Okay. There is also a big market. There is also a big market. There is one that is a boutique market, and there is also the volume market. You know, I usually say I like to sell Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but you need the Fiats. You know, the Fiats, sometimes they pay the bills. So there is market in the Midwest. I can name so many chains that they're looking for that specific style of a $7.99 or a $9.99. And if you have that, great, you can generate volume. It's important not to miss that business. But the idea is to raise the bar on the quality and price points on the vineyards. Correct.
Yes, and I just would like to add that, and this is very important, that for what we have been observing in the market, that probably the Vinho Verde region in Portugal, they are one of the only regions that comes here to promote the wine and they do it both for professionals, but then they open up their events to the public at the end. And I strongly believe that one of the reasons why you just mentioned it, Jack, that you find Vinho Verde not only a technical market, but you also find this in other supermarkets. It's one of the reasons, because the Vinho Verde region has been able also to promote or do some of the promotion to the final consumer, that then goes outside the ethical market and find a supermarket that is offering that is offering the Vinho Verde. And I find it here in Virginia. I find the Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, etc., selling Vinho Verde, and I don't see many other wines selling. So within the Portuguese context, this is a success story.
Well, you look at a Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio you have the $7.99s, you have the $10, and you got Santa Margarita at $19.99. The problem is, if the market gets too saturated with a $6.99, then when they start seeing the $12.99 or $15.99, the consumer is going to be, I used to see this at $6.99. It's $50. So we should start getting out of that plateau. However, there is a market for it. But raising a bar for $2 more, I don't see an issue.
And that's where, when you market to millennials and younger people, they don't know about $6.99 Vinho Verde because they never bought it. But let them buy $15.99 Vinho Verde and discover Vinho Verde as their favorite white wine.
It's quite complex. You already gave us some publications, some important publications, but I have a question from David Rego about events and about your recommendations of events or shows to attend and to exhibit the wines and find new partners. Do you have any recommendation? What do you recommend in this time?
The events are all on standby now. I mean, we have sometimes there is. I think that Vini Portugal conducts a lot of events throughout the year. That gives the opportunity to suffer some importers to.
Jack, can you open your mic, please?
I mean, what Vini Portugal, the purpose of Vini Portugal is to actually to reach out to importers, and these producers will be participating. I think that there is some Vini Portugal events that are very successful, and there is other ones that are not as successful. So I don't know if it's the way it's promoted. Chicago, which is a stock market for it. I was there with João. And we were tasting other people's wines, really. I mean, because there wasn't much people. It's sad to say that there was nothing. But we need to be realistic and say this cannot continue. We need to utilize our money, or it's the agency we're working with it. I don't know. I'm not criticize, but we're not reaching the consumers. And it's not just sending an email or sending a flyer. It's continuation. Just letting you know, 2 weeks prior to this, and by the way, on the 26th, there's going to be a tasting. The next week, you need to go back. It's not just sending one flyer. We looking for importers. We looking for customers. You know what I'm saying? So we at that stage that we cannot take the glory of saying they need us. No, they don't. They don't. So it has to be, I'm not blaming, I don't know the way it's marketed, but I believe that we need to be more aggressive because it costs money to us as an importer, costs to the producers to go to these events. Then there were some wine shows, Boston Wine Expo, but they're not doing it anymore. Sometimes you will get an importer that will cross by. But I think that we either Vini Portugal will do something just for wines in Portugal, or perhaps they should research if there was like a national, a worldwide, a United Nations wine tasting, for consumers and for importers to be able to achieve that. But that's the job of Vini to find importers.
And what do you think about the new types of events, the virtual tastings of wine and hybrid events? They are here to stay, or people are waiting to the normal
Well, I have to say I'm in a market a lot, and my customers are telling me that I cannot take these virtual tastings anymore. Unfortunately, it's what we have to do now. But the social media has been bombarded with producers talking about wines. I mean, it's great to listen to learn, but it's becoming overwhelmed. And the only channel at this time that we have is nothing we can do. It's nothing we can do until this change. And I think that why this was a wake-up call. I can make a presentation to New York or to California. I don't need to go there. Yes, this is a tool that it came to stay to help. The wine business, and we all know wine business, food, we need to taste. We need to listen to the person. We need to, it's I think that will come back. Gino, I don't know if you
I agree 100%. I said before that wine business is very tactile. People want to touch, they want to taste, they want to talk, but virtual events can be very efficient. So I don't believe we will go back to what was pre-COVID, but I believe we will be stuck in exactly the same method that we are currently. I think it will be a combination. There's a lot of people saying that there's a new normal, right? Things will never go back to what they were pre-COVID, and that's for the better. That's for the better. A lot of these trends are very positive for the wine business. It's just about having a good strategy. Same thing with events. Having bespoke events like Vini Portugal or Vinho Verde or Douro Wines are great. And then industry events like Vinexpo New York, well, maybe they can be good depending on your plan and your strategy and how you work the market. The U.S. is a weird place. Like in Italy, you have Vinitaly. You have one event once a year. Everybody goes. Vinexpo in Bordeaux or in Paris, same thing. The United States doesn't have a signature event that encompasses the whole world of wine. So I think bespoke events, like Jack was saying, a Vini Portugal event, a Vinho Verde event, a Douro Wines event, those tend to be more effective.
There was also, WSWA.
That's all for that's for the executive distributor trade. It's a very audience.
Participates. We have a suite. We submit invitations to all our partners around the country. It happens one year in Florida, one year in Las Vegas. That is the world. It's there. And there is a chance that you can find an imported spirits and wines. You have the largest company, it's called WSWA, which is Wholesalers Association, which MS Rocket is part. We spend over $100,000 just to be there. But we have a suite. Doesn't mean you need a suite. We send all the goods. We have someone in a suite catering food and everything. So you don't need to go that direction. But it's also, you will find some importers. But again, don't come in just with a brand. Come in with a plan. Come in with a plan.
That's a great point.
That's the final message for our very interesting conversation. We're almost running out of time, but we still have time for one last question from João Vilar, and he asks, what could be the best selling point for the Portuguese table wine, taking out Vinho Verde and Port wine? What do you think? Do you want to leave a final message about the best selling point?
The best selling point is Gino emphasized, and we all in a trade we do this. Portugal delivers in 3 days. You taste at $9.99, it over delivers. You're tasting at $25, it over delivers. And if you're tasting $100 bottle of wine with 94, 96 points, if that was out of California, it would be a $300 bottle of wine. You know what I'm saying? So A is Portugal over delivers. That's the number one thing. Portugal is like Italy, has a range of 100 different indigenous grape varieties. We still deliver terroir. Although Portugal, it's a lot of conversation, I can go on and on, but although we also have Cabernet, Merlot, Shiraz, but we use those to just give a little of spiciness into, but we try to preserve these varieties. A new generation of winemakers. You know, Portugal is part of the European continent. Portugal is now the second. United States is the second largest wines of Portugal. Continues to grow. 3 destinations, 3 years on the road. #1 destination in Europe. We can go on and on and on and on and on and on. But those are facts. We all know those are facts that we didn't have that 10 years ago. So we now have some systems that we can approach. We no longer that humble, it's okay. No. We are not that anymore. Look at what happened. Portugal is the vanguard on alternative energy. Portugal is IT. Portugal has a lot to offer. It doesn't mean the size. So it's all that combined that makes part of the sales pitch. But again, come in with a plan. Come here with a plan.
I think it's a great final message for this conversation and this webinar. This session is unfortunately coming to the end. Thank you for the presentations and all the relevant information for wine companies that want to invest or grow in the US. Just a few words in Portuguese to say goodbye. Obrigada a todos pela participação. A AICEP vai continuar a organizar webinars sobre diversos temas, setores e mercados. Para o próximo dia 15 está já prevista uma sessão sobre Marrocos. Continua a acompanhar-nos em portugalexporta.pt. Até breve. Obrigada.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.